Mother Jones just published a very important article where they are the first news outlet, I believe, to interview people who were just released from CCOT, the notorious torture gulag the U.S. sent Venezuelans to in El Salvador. I highly recommend you Google and check out this article yourself, but I'll summarize some of the key details. The men released today were part of the 230 Venezuelans accused of being gang members and sent to El Salvador from the United States. At least 130 were removed under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 without due process, and further investigations showed that many of them had no connections to any Venezuelan or other gangs. Now, if you remember, the U.S. claimed that they had no jurisdiction over these folks, but in fact, they were just released because the U.S. negotiated a prisoner swap with Venezuela. So I guess it turns out we did have some control over how these supposed criminals were being illegally imprisoned in El Salvador. Those who were imprisoned said that they were basically trapped there for 4 months without any contact with the outside world. They were kidnapped, they were beat for breakfast, beat for lunch, and beat for dinner. So just a reminder, we sent people to a torture facility in El Salvador without any due process or evidence. Unfortunately, however, for many, their nightmare is not over because they were in fact in the U.S. with pending asylum claims, often fleeing either the Maduro government in Venezuela or from gangs in Venezuela. So these folks are definitely not out of danger, even though they were out of the gulag in El Salvador. It's hard to imagine that something like this would happen again in our lifetime when you grow up studying things like Japanese internment camps, and to think that we sent folks to a torture prison in El Salvador without due process. And I hope one day we can have justice for these folks, and folks like Kirsty Nome can be held accountable for their crimes.